She's in there somewhere. Well, hello there. Yes, tonight we're going to do a little special thing on this thing I downloaded from the internet that is really good. It's let me get it. Here we go. Chinese tea and Dao De Jing. And I'll send you the link to this. But first, I wanted to share something from one of Master Ni's books, which is one of his really best. I would say this book and the Tao Te Ching are his two must-have books. Let me write this in the chat because otherwise you guys don't know what I'm talking about. And it's called the Workbook for Spiritual Development. It used to be called the Workbook for Spiritual Development of All People. But then when the new one came out, they changed it. Workbook, book for spiritual development. Spiritual development by Hua Qing Ni. And I think I told you last week that I called down to the clinic to make sure they were all okay, and they are. And their house was in the middle of the big fire, and it didn't burn down. And Maoxing says he thinks it's because of all the talismans and invocations and special, things they've been doing for their house, so it didn't burn down. Many years ago, when he first came to the U.S. from Taiwan, they had a shrine in this one house, and that house burned down. Everything except the shrine room didn't burn. So this is a little article called "The Importance of Reading the Tao Te Jing." People, of course, when you're saying it in Chinese, it's I think it's the tones Dao De Jing, Dao De Jing. People generally associate the origin of Taoist teachings with Lao Tzu. And this is very interesting. He's saying something very different here than a lot of people. People generally associate the origin of Taoist teachings with Lao Tzu, but in reality, the teaching of Tao did not originate with the Tao Te Ching. Before Lao Tzu, there were many sages who were already living examples of integral beings. In addition to the Tao Te Ching, the I Ching, the Yellow Emperor's book, and the Nei Ching. The Yellow Emperor's book is a book. Nei Ching is this book on Chinese medicine, which is thousands of years old and is still used when people are studying Chinese medicine today. And several other spiritual works were already in existence which reflected the deep insight of the ancient sages. So possibly he's talking about things that haven't been translated into English or maybe even lost. However, it is true that the Tao Te Ching has become the most popular classic of later times. And remember, Lao Tzu talks over and over about the ancient masters. So even though Tao Te Ching is 2,500 years ago, he's calling it classic of later times because he's going way back. The Tao Te Ching reflects a profound wisdom that has been used and accepted for generations, many generations. Its exalted integral truth is actually beyond words, which we know, Dao Ke Dao Fei Chang Dao. But peace, serenity, and inner harmony are the rewards for the one who receives its essence. This is what we get from this book that we've been studying for 5 years now in this class. And of course, a lot of us have been studying it much longer than that. A lifetime endeavor is open to those who accept its teachings. And this is why they call these kinds of Qigong, meditation, Tao Te Ching, lifelong practices. If there were, and this is a line that I highlighted, if there were any single book which I would unhesitantly adopt as my spiritual guideline for life, this would be it. It is an inexhaustible treasure. It can lead many individuals as well as a whole society in the present or in the future on the right path of life. It is not like the books of a spiritual tradition or religion which sell preconceptions and create prejudice between people, or influences them to become destructive, aggressive, and hot-headed. You know, like a lot of religions are all about my religion's right, your religion's wrong. I'm going to tear down your temples and just build my temples, and, you know, it goes on and on and on. We see that a lot in India right now, all over India and the Middle East, really. It is also not like those books which make people less vital so that they cannot face the reality of worldly life. And here, this is a little dig on Buddhism, because Master Ni has this thing about monks and nuns, people who drop out of society, but especially in those cultures, not so much in China, but those cultures where the monks and nuns are supported by society. They go around begging, or people bring them food because they are so-called spiritual people. He's really against that. He thinks everyone who's a, quote, spiritual person should take care of their own business, should support themselves, not leaning on others in society. And of course, many Buddhist people would disagree with that because a lot of times, especially in places like Nepal and places of India where people feel they are gaining merit by supporting the monks. Anyway, while not going rather it guides all people to lead a healthy and harmonious life. And that's a big thing in Taoism. Doesn't mean you have to be some super high level bodhisattva. Just leading a healthy and harmonious life is a lot to achieve right there. While not going into it too deeply, I feel it is important to introduce a few of the basic principles of the Dao De Jing to increase your understanding of its importance as a guide for your spiritual development. From these principles, you will see that spiritual development is not new, but is an expression of timeless, universal, moral nature. And so this next couple lines I highlighted. There are 3 general spheres of life covered in this book, this Dao De Jing book. The sphere of physical health cultivation, which enables one to live through the diversity of life. The next one is the sphere of mental clarity and cultivation, which enables one to transcend one's own emotions and worldly confusion, and the sphere of spiritual purity and cultivation, which enables one to achieve a high state of integration and unite with the universal, integral, spiritual realm, which is his version of saying Tao. More specifically, the Dao De Jing emphasizes selfless leadership along with selfless public service. This is a big thing in Taoism. I remember even years ago when I was up in the mountains in Wudang Mountain, meeting with Jaya, my friend the hermit who lives in the cave up there, and he was saying, it's not, if you want to be a Taoist, it's not enough to just meditate and do Qigong and stuff. You need to do something for society. And of course, he's a hermit who lives in a cave, so I'm not exactly sure what he's doing for society, but he is very entertaining when people go there and meet with him. Here, I just sent the chat because I hadn't sent it. In Lao Tzu's time, people were already competing for leadership and striving to be a position of authority over others. This is what was happening in society in the Zhou dynasty when he left, when he was seeing so much of society becoming of a bunch of self-centered people. A very difficult time called the Warring States period. I think in our country we are also entering a very difficult time right now. I wouldn't call it the Warring States, but it's not about everybody trying to take care of everybody. The Dao De Jing does not exalt this kind of leadership, but takes the examples of past great ancestors, and then he talks about some quasi or mythological leaders in Chinese ancient society. Lao Tzu says that anyone who takes on the troubles of a nation is the true king or leader of that nation. A truly selfless leader or emperor is one who finds the way to solve the troubles of all his people, which sometimes happen a lot of times not happen with the leader or the president or the emperor, taking care of the troubles of all their people. Natural leadership is not a privilege or personal enjoyment of power, but a personal service. So this idea that the leader, whether they're president or king or emperor or prime minister, their role is to be of service, which we don't see all the time in leaders of all kinds of countries. For this reason, the Dao De Jing advises one not to be competitive, especially for leadership. If, however, the chance or opportunity comes to you, you must morally and courageously take the responsibility and fulfill your personal duty and moral duty of the time. Once you fulfill the obligation, do not luxuriate in your success or seek recognition for your work. When the mission is accomplished, it is time to retire or retreat from prominence. That goes right back to what Lao Tzu says in his book. We can find good examples of that kind of leadership both before and after Lao Tzu in Chinese history. Before Lao Tzu, those people ruled the country, but after Lao Tzu, they were mostly advisors to the leaders. He's talking about the Taoists here. Some of the people like the Yellow Emperor learned from Taoist masters when he was emperor, but then in later times the Taoists became more advisors to the throne. This means that while they did not put themselves in a position of leadership, they nevertheless influenced the leaders from a more humble position. And this is why when they're saying, if you're a Taoist and you're trying to teach people, do it from a humble position. Not proclaiming yourself as Grand Master Solala, Grand Master Bill or something. Another thing we learned from Lao Tzu is that a person does not need to be outwardly and recognizably meritorious, holy, or virtuous. That goes back to the old Taoist tradition of doing secret good deeds. One only needs to naturally follow their normal nature. And this is something he emphasizes a lot. To become a sage or a quasi-sage or a Taoist person, you're not calling attention to yourself. You're remaining humble. You're doing the secret good deeds, or you're helping other people without proclaiming yourself as some sort of great person, meritorious person. A truly moral person living a normal life will be undistinguishable in their morality. This is also something he talks a lot about. You don't have to live some kind of special holy person lifestyle. Just leading a normal moral life without creating too many problems for other people is actually a very high level of being. A truly moral, even though they may, let's see. Lao Tzu also clearly points out the importance of non-violence in everyday life. I said that wrong. Lao Tzu also clearly points out the importance of non-violence. The next sentence, in everyday life, few people are killers or even people of violence, but many people are emotionally violent. This is a line I highlighted. Many people lose their tempers when things do not go their way. The loss of spiritual qualities such as patience and tolerance make people take a violent emotional path. This is the true root of evil. Evil does not necessarily have a deep evil nature. Most people are become evil because of a pattern of emotional violence, and many people commit emotional violence toward themselves. That is why harmony, purity, and quietness are taught in the Dao De Jing. These will eventually resolve or reform personal emotional violence. So that's this thing of when you're thinking about people being violent, even emotionally violent on other people, which happens, right? And then he's turning that around. Lao Tzu says it in his book, not being emotionally violent toward ourselves. not give ourselves such a hard time. First, we need to make our bodies healthy, flexible, and strong, but not strong in the muscular sense. And this is an interesting little passage here. We value the unconquerable, gentle strength. That is what we need to cultivate, not the type of violent force that is so common today. It also suggests keeping away from unreasonable ambition and competition. And of course, Tai Chi Chuan, which is really ancient. There's various stories of how it got started, and there's various families that claim to be the beginners of Tai Chi Chuan. In the Wudang Mountain, where I go, and when I go to China, they believe that it was Johnson Feng who created what today we call Tai Chi. But, Tai Chi is a spiritual practice, it's a physical practice, it's an energetic practice. But in China today, they have huge tournaments, and people win trophies for their Tai Chi. And a lot of it's really showy. They're going into really deep stances and leaping up and down and stuff, which I'm sure the Ni family does not approve of. And probably Johnson Feng and the ancient Taoists from the Sung Dynasty would not approve of either. It's become like, I don't know, it's like a way to show off how good you are. And there's a million videos you'll see on YouTube, and it is very impressive what they're doing, but it's more of a way to show off and compete in a contest to win a trophy. More important, we need to develop wisdom as our inner subtle light, and should harmonize this light with whomsoever we come into contact. So we want to develop our own inner subtle light, and this idea of harmonizing our light with everyone we come into contact with. That's a really interesting idea, I think. And then this part I highlighted. We must never make anyone feel inferior or unsafe around us, but instead make them feel supported. And finally, follow a natural way of life like the developed ones, like the sages. That does not mean you need to live as a primitive person. You don't have to go live in a cave like Jaya. But live in harmony with nature. A spiritually achieved one is not a special person of external distinction. He or she harmonizes with the natural environment and does not appear as a miracle performer or special being. And we see this happen a lot, even in modern times. Modern India, even in this country, especially in the 60s, we had all these teachers coming from India, and we were in our ignorance, being young Americans, we thought, well, they came from India, they're wearing robes, they must be a master. And even if things start getting really sketchy, and this happens with modern Qigong teachers also, things get a little sketchy, and suddenly they are controlling their students. And what's the word? Control them sexually and money-wise and all these kinds of things. This is not what a real sage does. This is not what a real sage is. And you can see it even today. People are they fall under the spell of these people who do have some level of cultivation, and may have some siddhis or kind of little power things they can do. But people think, well, they must be enlightened, and so whatever they say must be right, even if it feels very, very wrong to me. Master Ni's never asked me for any money. He is one who embraces oneness with a capital O. That is the spiritual essence. In one's personal cultivation, oneness is the simple essence of one's own life being. The thing of importance in one's cultivation is to embrace one's spiritual essence. So I like that little turn of the phrase. It isn't just work on your spiritual essence, do your cultivation practices, but actually embrace your spiritual essence. Embrace it. Isn't that nice? Nice image. And lastly, the essential principles of spiritual cultivation and other important guidelines are contained in Lao Tzu's Dao De Jing. And one of his other books I was reading maybe this morning, he has some of his other books as people, a lot of people are into fitness now. I go to the YMCA here in Eugene. They just built a really fabulous one. And I'm doing just some simple weights, not very big weights, just to stay in some kind of shape as I go into my senior years. But I see people there, they're pushing these huge weights and their faces are all contorted and their faces really red and they can barely breathe. And that's what they think they should be doing. In one of his earlier books, Master Ni says, the more you work with machines, the more machine-like you will become. And years ago, one of my teachers came who was teaching us this Qigong thing, and there was a guy there who was really nice, huge bodybuilder, massive muscles, but his body was so tight when we were doing these beautiful flowing movements. He just couldn't quite get there because his body was so tight. He had so many muscles. So after that, though, he stopped doing that. Last time I saw him, he was in better shape energetically. So this is this really great article I found somehow on the internet. And it's from a company that sells Chinese tea. And I'm going to send you guys this. And there's this beautiful image here of how, when I've talked about how it's written on these bamboo slats that are tied together. And they're from the right down and then over to the left. And I'm not sure if this is doing it backwards. Oh, it is. Okay, so this is the right, your right. And you can see Dao Ke Dao Fei Cheng Dao there. So Chinese tea. This is another great thing about Taoism. We have all these pathways. Whoops, I just dropped the glass. To spiritually, emotionally, psychological, physical health. We have the path of Qigong. We have the path of Tai Chi. We have the path of combining food. We have the path of Chinese medicine, of calligraphy, of art. And tea is another one of the pathways. Chinese tea holds a quiet, I like that, quiet yet profound connection to the teachings of the Dao De Jing. Although any questions about any of that stuff I was just talking about for a minute or two, I know how, I love slang and how slang words develop. And I know my young friends, one of the slang thing is, I haven't seen you for a long time. They say, well, we haven't seen each other for a minute. I don't know if you've heard that. Okay, I'm really going off. In many ways, the experience of preparing and drinking tea embodies the wisdom of the Dao De Jing, revealing the essence of Taoist principles in a single mindful practice, if you use your tea that way. Here's how Chinese tea aligns with some of the essential, authentic teachings from the Dao De Jing, with specific quotes that reflect this connection deeply. Each sip of tea can become a quiet moment to reflect on Lao Tzu's words and their timeless insights. So here's the first quote up there, which says, "The Tao that can be expressed as the Tao is not the ever-constant Tao. The name that can be named is not the ever-constant name." So that's their translation of those first two lines. These opening lines of the Dao De Jing highlight the mysterious, ungraspable nature of Tao. Lao Tzu suggests that the true essence of Tao, and they're saying the way with a capital W, is beyond words and concepts. But of course, he did write a little over 5,000 characters to give us some idea of what he was talking about. And he's giving us various illustrations and pictures. Attempting to define or name it will always fall short, as the Tao exists in a realm of experience that language cannot fully capture. Of course, people have been writing books about Tao for thousands of years, and they're still churning them out. And some of these books that we study can be very, very helpful. There's nothing wrong with books about Tao. While we can talk about the flavor, aroma, warmth, and texture of tea, its true essence is only known through the act of drinking and experiencing it directly. So you can read all about tea and all the tea qualities and all the chemical interactions that are going on in teas, especially like pu'er tea or liu bao tea. But to really know tea, you need to drink the tea. You need to taste the tea. You know, one of the old Zen masters in Japan, said to really know the taste of tea, to really know the taste of Zen, you must know the taste of tea. Let's see. Just as the Tao eludes definitions, tea's essence unfolds in ways that can't be fully expressed, inviting us to engage with it beyond words. So my friend Wu De, who Bill orders tea from, is very familiar with, who lives in Taiwan. He's an American guy who's married to a Taiwanese woman, and he's a Zen master, a Zen priest, and a tea master. And he does these tea ceremonies for people lasting 2 to 3 hours in which everyone is silent the whole time. And they're drinking the tea out of small bowls, not little cups. And I don't know if that's my style. Well, it's certainly not the way I do tea ceremonies. But I keep reading these things about people come away from that going, wow, that was so powerful. That was so great. I got to go so deep. So that's another thing of moving beyond words to just drinking the tea in silence, and really he's serving the tea, we're accepting the tea, and then we're sharing this specific moment in time, what the Japanese call ichigo ichi, which means this moment, this special present moment that will never be another moment exactly like this. We should pay attention and really embrace and really value this moment. There's another, it actually means one moment, one meeting. Ichi is the number one in Japanese. Okay. In a quiet moment of tea drinking, we are reminded that some of life's most meaningful experiences are beyond the scope of language. Just as the Tao remains unnamed, tea offers a simple but powerful way to connect with that sense of mystery, helping us appreciate the beauty of what cannot be fully defined. We can appreciate it, we can embrace it, and we can enjoy it, even if we can't actually define it. This act of quiet appreciation brings us closer to Lao Tzu's teaching as we release the need to label and control, embracing the fullness of the moment as it is. So this one has a cool little image too. Here we go. And it's the quote from Lao Tzu is, "Supreme kindness is like water. Water benefits all things and does not contend/compete." The water course way, right? This line beautifully illustrates the Taoist ideal of selfless action and gentle strength. There's that idea of gentle strength like a Tai Chi master. If someone's really a master of Tai Chi, I remember years ago reading this book. They actually made a film of it by an American guy who goes to study Tai Chi in China. And he has a martial artist that he also trains with. But then the martial artist is a woman, and she invites him to spar with her. But every time he tries to grab her, she just slides out of his way. Every time he goes like this, she's right before him. And as soon as he goes like this, she's gone. She's slithered away. And she's so soft and flexible in her movements that no way he can pin her down, even though he's an actual martial artist himself. let's see, where this quiet humility and strength of water inspire us to approach life with compassion and non-competition. There's that idea of non-competition again. In the world of Chinese tea, water plays a central role. Of course, it is the medium through which tea's essence is released, gently coaxing the flavor from each leaf without force. You're pouring the water. You're not like crashing the water. You're pouring the water slowly into the leaves, and they mix up with the water, and then they open, and then they release all their fragrance and flower and taste and all sorts of really beneficial chemical compounds. But it wouldn't be anything if we were just eating the leaves, eating the dry leaves. Just as water accepts and supports the leaves, so does tea embody the Taoist spirit of yielding and nourishing without competing. Sorry, I just said that. Each cup of tea becomes a subtle reminder that true kindness, like water, flows naturally and sustains life without seeking anything in return. This goes right back to what I was just talking about, Master Ni and the Dao De Jing. Drinking tea with this mindset, we're reminded to adopt a soft, nurturing approach to our relationships and actions, embodying the supreme kindness Lao Tzu describes. Tea, like water, teaches us to give without demand, to benefit others without striving for control, and to embrace humility as a source of true strength. Humility is a source of strength, very different than what a lot of people, like our elected official, whose idea of strength is to be blustery and in control and push other people around. And they're saying the flexibility and softness of Tai Chi movement is actually real strength. And in this way, tea drinking is more than a simple act. It becomes a practice of embodying kindness, reflecting the Taoist virtue of selfless giving and natural harmony. So the next quote is this one: reaching the ultimate emptiness, maintain deep stillness. This line reflects Lao Tzu's teachings on the power of stillness and the quiet center within. Remember, Zhuangzi said, live in the inner. Oh, now I'm forgetting the quote. Oh well, inner stillness. That's what we're striving for. Even stillness within movement. That's what Tai Chi is. That's what Qigong is. Stillness within movement. The quiet center, where if we can spend at least a little bit of time in this quiet center, not only the center of ourselves, but the center of everything, then there's a kind of a strength that comes from that. And that doesn't mean just Taoist meditation. Any kind of meditation will give you that kind of strength. In Taoism, quote, ultimate emptiness is a state of pure openness and receptivity, free from the constant movement and noise of the mind. This emptiness is not hollow, but a space of calm awareness, a place where insight and harmony can emerge naturally. So even, say, in our meditation practice, we're not trying to force anything. I must still my mind. I must sit for 6 hours. I will become a meditation athlete. You know, what some people do. That's what they think meditation is about. But it's here he's talking about insight and harmony that can emerge naturally. The act of drinking Chinese tea invites us into this very stillness. In the tea ceremony, each movement, warming the pot, pouring the water, waiting for the leaves to steep, is done with a calm, deliberate rhythm. You know, we even talk about, first we fill the pot with hot water, and we shower the teapot with hot water. to warm up the pot, and then we pour that water into the sharing cup, the fairness cup they call, and then into our teacups to water them. And then we fill the pot with tea leaves. This is in the Kung Fu style tea. We fill the pot with tea leaves with hot, and then we fill it with hot water, and then we shower the outside, and then we let it sit for a few moments, and then we pour that first steeping out, because that's the steeping that wakes the leaves up, that washes it from any dust or anything like that. And many people in Chinese tradition, there's this thing called tea pets. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. There's these little, like I have a little brass frog on my tea tray, what has a coin in its mouth and coins all around it, and I shower it's for good luck in my business ventures and things like that. And sometimes they have little people or various kind of animals, and in China you see them wherever you go, that they always have a tea pet on their tea tray. This slow, thoughtful process gives way to a sense of inner quiet as distractions fall away and attention is gently directed inward. In this space, drinking tea becomes a practice of embracing emptiness, helping us to reach a kind of, quote, ultimate stillness that allows for a deep connection to the moment, that ichigo ichi. This one moment, what is that from Japanese? It's one moment, one meeting, ichi. With each sip, we find ourselves letting go, experiencing the present in a state of peaceful oneness. Just as Lao Tzu suggests, this practice doesn't add to our experience. Rather, it invites us to set aside our usual busyness and be fully receptive. So it's not adding something, it's kind of we're taking something away. We're kind of away, meaning we're emptying our mind, even for a tiny bit. The simplicity of tea brings us closer to Lao Tzu's ideal, finding a quiet strength and balance in stillness, revealing the richness of life as it is. How are we doing here? Oh, we're doing great. And here's another one of those nice. I actually have a bamboo thing that I got in China at a street guy that rolls up and everything. It has some of the first chapter of Dao De Jing. So here's the quote: "Softness overcomes hardness." That's a very unique concept that I haven't seen anywhere other than Taoism and Lao Tzu. Soft tea leaves, immersed in hot water, transform it with their gentle strength, reminding us of this Taoist principle. Sometimes I say it's an act of alchemy, of transformation, especially when you're drinking, say, a hard, dry brick of pu'er tea. And people who don't know pu'er, you show them, this is what we're going to drink. And you're like, it looks like just a really hard clump of dead, dry leaves. And it's so hard that, at least the show version, we have to have a little tool to break it up. It's called a pu'er pick. And it's got a sharp end, or you can use a knife. And you don't go from the top down, you go from the side to break it up. And then you put that in some hot water, and it transforms itself to a living liqueur with all kinds of wonderful qualities and flavors. It's a sort of it's a transformation and kind of an alchemy, really. Okay, let's see, where are we? Lao Tzu teaches that softness and flexibility are more powerful than force, and tea is a gentle example of this wisdom. Oh, sorry, I already said that. So we're talking about the leaves, soft and delicate, transformed from hot water into something rich and satisfying. They don't resist, talking about the leaves, they don't resist or impose their will. They simply release their essence. Similarly, in life, We can approach different situations with a soft and adaptable spirit. That's part of the water course way, right? You put the water in a square container, the water becomes square. You put it in a round container, it becomes round. And if we can be as adaptable as water, that's what Laos is talking about, which is a challenge, especially certain times. This could be a really big challenge. And the last part of that sentence is finding strength and gentleness and resilience through yielding. As tea leaves surrender to the water, they teach us that true power lies not in resistance but in flow. This act of yielding and softening aligns us with the Tao, guiding us to face life's challenges with grace rather than force. And then the next quote is, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. In Taoism, the journey is as essential as the destination, or in Taoism, the way it's taught is sometimes it's even more important. And each small action can carry the weight of something much larger or lead to something much larger. The simple act of drinking tea offers a fitting parallel to this wisdom, an experience that's unassuming yet rich with meaning, encouraging presence in every small gesture. You know what? I'm pouring the tea for people when I have people over, pouring the tea, and then I just go like this. Oh, you can't really see it. I just go like that. That means it's ready. Take your tea. Let's begin. And it's just sharing the tea. Like, I pour you tea, here's your cup. It's not like that. You know, it's more of a, that way it's more of a transmission, which is what we want with all these practices, a transmission. Imagine the preparation of Chinese tea as a metaphorical first step, that first step of 1,000 miles. Heating the water, placing the tea leaves, and waiting as the flavor unfurls mirrors the gradual unfolding of any journey. And some teas, especially some oolongs and some green teas, some of my Chinese friends, they use a glass or a small glass pot, because then you can actually watch the leaves open, which is kind of nice too. Let's see, where am I? Just as Lao Tzu teaches that large tasks should be approached by starting small, tea requires patience and presence. Each step in its preparation is necessary to experience its full, rich flavor. Taking that first sip is a reminder that, however long or daunting a path may seem, true progress is always made one mindful moment at a time, one step at a time. And then the last quote is, he who knows people is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. This phrase speaks to two levels of understanding, the knowledge of the world around us and the deeper self-knowledge that reveals our true nature. Lao Tzu suggests that while observing and understanding others brings wisdom, true enlightenment comes from introspection and self-awareness. Chinese tea, especially in the quiet and reflective setting of a tea ceremony, provides a unique opportunity for this self-knowledge. Doesn't mean you can drink tea by yourself. You don't have to be too, you can just do a simple way of drinking tea for yourself or one other person. Or you can serve tea to many people. In September, I served tea to 50 people at a conference. Chinese tea, especially in the quiet and reflective setting of a tea ceremony, provides a unique opportunity for this self-knowledge, and in the act of preparing and drinking tea, there's a space to slow down, turn inward, and become more aware of one's thoughts, emotions, and inner state. Tea invites us to be still, making it easier to look beyond the surface and connect with ourselves on a deeper level. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's such. I think it was really well done how they did this. So I will send you guys a copy of this. I was looking at their tea. They seem to have good quality tea at a reasonable price.
You know, I forgot you mentioned teas opening up in the pot. I forgot. I've got a glass pot that's made for tea
Mm,
flowers.
mm,
And I'm gonna have to go look for tea flowers.
yeah,
I forgot all
yeah.
about it.
There's a certain kind of tea. It comes in like this little hard kernel.
Yeah.
It's a flower tea, and then you put it in, especially a, a glass pot, and then it opens into this flower.
Yeah. See, somebody gave me some, and I
Yeah,
teapot got put away, and I forgot all about it.
yeah,
So I'm glad you reminded me.
yeah. Well, it's like, we sometimes are living in our life and it's sort of we can be emotionally and energetically shut down. And then we need to take some quiet space and imagine that we are a kernel of flower tea, jincha, and then we are bathing ourselves in metaphorical hot water, metaphorical warm water, bathing ourselves in our cultivation practice, in our meditation or qigong kind of practice, and just witnessing ourselves, never mind someone else, witnessing ourselves opening up and flowering, just like that flower tea. I think it's a beautiful thing. Yes,
I
Joan.
was wondering when you do the first pour that you then pour off, how long
Yeah.
do you leave it
Just if, well,
steep?
depends on the tea, but just a few minutes, especially if it's pour tea.
So you actually let it brew for a few
Just a
minutes
few
before
minutes.
you
Yeah.
dump it off.
Yeah. It has a little bit of color when you pour it off. But some people say it also pours off some of the caffeine for people that are really sensitive to caffeine. We have friends who won't drink pour tea because they're afraid of the caffeine, even though caffeine is balanced out by catechisins and all these other chemical processes.
Yeah, it's
You
still
know,
less
it,
than coffee. It's still not as much as coffee. Even the
what
pure,
has as much as coffee?
no, it does not.
Oh, no, it doesn't. I mentioned the hydration thing I'm doing these days. It's called the water cure. It's like the idea is that many people are dehydrated and their system is not working smoothly and flowingly, and that we need to hydrate ourselves with at least 2 quarts like this of water with a quarter teaspoon of salt in it and warm water so it really is more like what's going on in our body. And I've just been doing it for about a week and I'm already feeling effects, which is why I've been working after dinner. Usually I don't work after dinner, but I have all these projects and then I have energy to do it. But I kind of hit a wall today, so I'm taking the night off. So I want to share this other quote. I've been going through kind of a stressful time in my life. Believe it or not, I don't make a lot of money from these classes. This is what I depend upon for what I do. Um, so I've been a little stressed out lately, and I found this quote in one of his books. Oh, it's actually from his I Ching, and this really came home to me. Using difficulty as an excuse for personal failure only obstructs self development. Using difficulty as an excuse for personal failure. When properly used, one's emotional difficulty become one's nutrition, one's fundamental education, and the impetus for growth. During times of difficulty, one should independently strive to eliminate rather than emphasize confusion and negativity. A lot of people get depressed and then they sort of emphasize it to other people or to themselves and they blow it up bigger and bigger and bigger. So he's saying eliminate rather than emphasize it. And everyone has personal difficulties and is responsible for silently overcoming them, for silently overcoming these troubles, not throwing it into somebody else's lap or bemoaning your fate to everyone you meet. Everyone has personal difficulties and is responsible for silently overcoming these troubles or miseries by oneself. Reinforcing negativity supports it, and eventually it is absorbed into one's nature. And we all know people like that who have difficulties in their life, but they kind of emphasize it all the time. And eventually it's absorbed into who they are. That's one of those people that complain all the time. And the last part is everything that happens has a positive reason, although it may seem disastrous at the time. I'm sure we can all agree to that or have experienced that. By embracing a reflective attitude, one's mind can be cleaned of delusions and negative influences, thus allowing the opportunity for spiritual growth. By embracing a reflective attitude, one's mind can be cleaned of delusions and negative influences, thus allowing the opportunity for spiritual growth. Whew! There's a lot of teaching right in those 3 paragraphs. I'll send you that as well. Yeah, when I send the video out. So I need a little more of the salty water. 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. You don't even taste it really. But it can get your system working in a much more natural, healthy way. Just making sure you're totally full of what you need. And tea and coffee and certainly soft drinks in those don't count. I drink a lot of tea. I drink 3 or 4 different kinds of tea in a day often, but that doesn't count because tea is actually what's the word? Drying. There's a better word for that.
Diuretic.
Yeah, but no. What was I saying that the water cure is to
Hydrating.
hydrate? Yeah, that tea is dehydrating.
Well, it's not really. That's actually a misconception. You
Yeah,
still do get hydration benefit from coffee and tea. It's just not as good as if it was just pure water.
yeah. That's why we were. I'm not stopping my tea drinking, but I'm
Yeah,
adding.
right, right.
As I start the day with green tea, and I start my day drinking green tea and reading these Taoist texts.
That's a good idea.
And then I go to my temple because I have a freaking temple in my backyard and do my practices there. And then I come into my office and check my emails and stuff. It's really quite a lovely lifestyle.
Yeah, it's neat.
It's just, it gets stressful sometimes how I'm going to, I'm 74. I'm not going to retire. I don't have enough from Social Security to retire because I was a hippie all those years and didn't have straight jobs and didn't put money into Social Security. But today, I think 555. Thank you for the blessing. Thank you for the magic. And this is especially powerful if you're feeling really distressed and you see that and go, oh God, all right, I'm going to be thankful for even this. We had a huge willow tree, 3 people around. Huge, went up 3 stories tall, and it's been a center of our yard and a place where we've done lots of ceremony under. And it just got cut down in this past week because it was rotting. And there were big limbs, like this big, that were this thick, that were falling off. And we have a cabin in the back where a friend lives, and we're really worried about these limbs falling off. And also, on the trunk there was this big thing, like a big mushroomy thing that grew out, which is a sign that it's rotten inside. So they came up, these guys went way up the tree and cut limbs and had them tied up so they would go down. And so today they cut the rest of the giant trunk, and our yard is now full of 3 huge piles of wood that isn't that great for firewood, actually. Willow. It's kind of smoky, and some people think it smells bad, and it doesn't. It's not that hot burning. So,
It's expensive too to have a tree like that cut down.
oh, very, very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why if they would have taken all the wood away, but it would have cost an extra $1,000. So we
Oh,
opted not to do that.
wow.
So we're gonna rent a truck at some point and put it out on Facebook or whatever, the local Facebook. Free wood. It's willow. It's not the greatest firewood, but it's free. Just come and take it away. Okay, so next week starts a new session. This week I'm actually sending out some stuff about the Open Heart Qigong. That's finally starting to coalesce. And my idea is in the next series of this to focus even more on practices that either come directly from Dao De Jing or from other Taoist sources. So we have a few minutes if anybody has anything they want to share or ask.
No, I just need to continue to work on getting out of my head and start practicing.
That's what we are. That's our job. That's all of our job.
That's right. Of course,
get out of your head and into your dantian, or out of your head and into your heart.
I'm one of those people that tends to live in my head, so it's always a challenge.
Oh yeah, me too. Years ago, my friend Francesco Garipoli, we were having a Qigong conference in Portland, right near where I live, and he brought a Qigong master over from China who was 93 or 94 at the time, Master Duan, who was a real character. He stayed at our house. They came in the night before. He flew in from China. They picked him up at the airport, brought him to my house, spent the night at my house. And the next morning, we were going to this Chinese restaurant we were walking to, and Master Duan had this metal pipe like this long, and he had these big bags of this really funky like tobacco. So we're walking to the restaurant, and he's got his pipe, and I say, they're not going to let him smoke that in the restaurant. And Francesco said, "Oh, that's not just a pipe; it's a weapon." Because this guy Master Duan was a martial artist. And the next day, a friend of mine came over, this kind of husky guy who's into martial arts, and Master Duan was like knocking him across the room, with like hitting him with like his shoulder, and knocking the guy across the room. He was amazing. So he went we had the conference, which was great, and he did some sort of Chinese breakdancing thing, or he was on the floor spinning around and stuff. And then he was treating people, and he was assessing people's health, and then he treated a bunch of people. I said, "Okay, what about me?" And he said, "Oh, your health is very good, except for too much of this." I said, "Yep, you got me." Yes, because I am also one of those people that thinks all the time and thinks about my thinking and all that. So it's very tricky for me to do deep meditation too. So it's a lifelong practice.
Yep.
It's a long life, lifelong practice. That's what these practices are about. Which is why Don, who's in his 90s, could be a martial artist. Why Nee can be 103 and still look so good. Of course, these people have been doing it their whole life.
Yeah.
And I didn't start till 35 years ago. But hey, better late than never.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay, folks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your attention. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. Good night.
And DC, I have changed I'm going to write to you about the Taiwan thing. I changed the dates to earlier in the month. That should be better for both of us. Okay, end.